Hey guys, welcome to this week's podcast. Today I have an interview with René from DB Electronics, plus all the normal news and stuff. And I got feedback from you guys who said that the backdrop was good enough for now, so I switched it to the blue side this week. I don't know, you guys let me know which one works better. Maybe there's just like a video thing too, where overlaying images over one of the two colors works better. I don't know. I have a lot of video editing friends that watch this podcast, so I listen to you guys. And I really will someday get to an actual blue screen, just one step at a time. But it would be neat to just have a real blue screen, so I could have stuff floating around behind me, just like the drones with Lady Gaga's halftime show. I still can't believe people thought that was in real time, but anyway, let's just jump right into the news. First up, I just want to thank my buddy Jared for sending me a whole bunch of stuff I needed. I have a want list on my website for things that, some are high priority and some are just, I need them eventually because I want to start testing. But I finally got a Dreamcast light gun. So I really want to test how these work. I don't know if they work in just 480i or if they'll work in 480p as well. Unlike the PlayStation ones, there's no place to plug in composite video on these. So I'm just really looking forward to see what they do, and I don't even know if you could do a 480p light gun game with the way the technology works, but I'll test it as soon as I get a chance to, so thank you very much for sending all this stuff, and I'm looking forward to doing some run-throughs on it. Also, just another callback from last week, I had mentioned the game Retroid, which was basically somebody took Super Metroid and hacked the maps so that it's exactly like the original Metroid, essentially making a 16-bit version of the game. I had made a comment last week about Ridley being too hard, and I was totally wrong. So I just assumed because it was a ROM hack that the developer must have made it really hard like most of them do. But nope, as long as you just wander around and get the correct items, then everything's fine. So start to finish, I absolutely loved the game. I'm totally going to play it again, especially if there's ever any updates to it. But I still haven't gotten in touch with the creator, so if anybody knows him or knows a way to get in touch with him, please let me know. Because it's one of my favorite Super Metroid ROM hacks, and I even added it to my page on the website for it. I definitely recommend it. It looks like a speedrunner found an extra coin in Donkey Kong 64 for the Nintendo 64. I guess there was always 976 possible coins, but somebody found that if you run through the tall grass in one area and then I think throw something, Donkey Kong would actually find the 977th coin. So I wasn't a huge Donkey Kong 64 fan, but if anybody was out there looking to collect every tidbit, I just thought that was really cool that all these years later we're still just finding extra stuff in these games. As expected, it looks like the production of the Wii U has ended. So I believe they said a few months ago that this was going to happen, and it makes sense that with it about a month away from the Switch's launch, that they've moved all their resources over to making Switch games, consoles, and accessories and stuff. So not unexpected, but I guess it's the end of an era for Nintendo. The Dreamcast HDMI box called the Akura is now available for pre-order. It's $85, which includes shipping, and should be delivered around mid-March. It's made by the beharbros, who are the same guys that make those other awesome Dreamcast products, and it also has the same features, such as a scan liner and the ability to switch between 480i and 480p modes. It's an analog to digital converter, which is fine. It's just it doesn't render in HDMI, so you're not going to be able to get any upscaling through it. But in my personal opinion, I really think the Dreamcast's output looks pretty good on modern day TVs. I love playing Daytona on my flat screen, and it looks almost as good as the PS3 version. So in my opinion, at the moment, this is the best way to get your Dreamcast into a flat screen TV. And I'm sure that there are other solutions coming up on the horizon, but all the ones that I know about are internal mods. So this is just plugs right in the back, there's no modding required, and it outputs HDMI. So at the moment, it's definitely my first choice for Dreamcast on a flat screen. Speaking of the Behar brothers, there's also more news about their Consolized Game Gear. It's going to be $290, and it'll also include a RGB SCART cable as well as an AC adapter, and that also includes shipping. And it should be available sometime around March. So this is pretty cool, and it's actually, I don't know how they're able to sell it that cheap, to be honest with you, because it combines a Game Gear, Tim's Game Gear TV kit, and then they made their own case for it, plus the cable and everything else. I mean, it's my opinion that this is a pretty darn good deal. A lot of work has to go into each one of these, and I would assume that they did the capacitor replacements on each one because the Game Gears just won't really function without it. So if you were looking for an RGB consolized Game Gear, this is probably for you. I don't have any new footage of it, but hopefully I'll at least get one in to demo, because I've always loved Game Gear, and I just, any way to play it on TV, I at least want to try out. There's a Mega Man 2 remake that was just released called Mega Man 2.5D, and it looks pretty incredible. It's PC only, and it takes the 2.5D perspective of the game. So it's not a 3D game, it's still a side-scroller, but you could kind of see deep into it. Anybody watching on YouTube will be able to see now. And it looks pretty amazing. I wish there was some way to get this on a real console. And, you know, I'm not even sure how that would work with licensing, but this is definitely a game I would buy and play because it looks really cool. Another emulation console called the Retroblox was just announced. And as soon as it was announced, I kind of jumped to conclusions about what it might be. And then somebody in a conversation told me I might have these guys all wrong. So basically, imagine the Retron 5, but it's got a CD-ROM drive in it. And then modular inputs, so pieces of plastic that you pull off, and each piece of plastic would have, like for Super Nintendo, you'd have 2 controller ports and then the slot to put Super Nintendo games. So basically one console could handle pretty much everything. So I love the design, the physical design of it. I think something like this is the absolute perfect physical way to do a modular game system like this. But it is, as far as I know, still just software emulation. And there's no price announced yet. So this is, all of these things are kind of important. I know, personally, this is probably a long way off, but if we were able to get an FPGA console, kind of like Kevtris's Zimba 3000 that's coming up, if you were to take that and put it in this side, or this type of a design, I think that itself would be just amazing, because then that one plastic mold that you have to buy would probably last forever because you could just put different guts in it as time goes by, but also your modules would be the same forever. So if every 4 or 5 years you're going to buy a new base with a new FPGA unit in it, awesome, whatever, because all of the other stuff that you have for it would still work. So this is all speculation, of course. I'm just talking out my ass, talking about what I wish this thing was. So I hope to talk to the guys behind it, and I got their email addresses, and I will contact them directly, and hopefully even try to get them on to talk about their project and see what makes this different than the other emulation boxes. But I'm crossing my fingers that this isn't just like a Raspberry Pi stuck in a cool case. I really hope there's more to this. So I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt, and at the very least, that console design itself is pretty awesome. My Life in Gaming just uploaded a video on the Visteon, which was a weird piece of tech that allowed you to play Game Boy Advance games in a car TV. It's kind of a strange device, and if you like videos about weird tech, or if you're just really into the Game Boy Advance, I would definitely give it a watch. It's a cool video. No spoilers, plug your ears, but it's not even close to the best way to playing a Game Boy Advance game, but it seems pretty neat, and if I ever get a chance to play with one, I would like to, but it's not something I would ever go hunt down. Darksoft is making more progress with his Neo Geo ROM cart. He just uploaded another video showing it in action and showing some of the load times getting shorter, so it's pretty cool. I still am really excited to try any one of these Neo Geo ROM carts out and do a full review on them, because this is something all of us have been waiting for a long time. And speaking of Neo Geo ROM carts, the NeoSD team just posted an update saying that they should be ready to ship within a few days. They got the completed PCBs in, and they're just waiting for the shells, and should be able to start boxing things up and shipping once the shells come in and are verified. So I'm crossing my fingers it doesn't take too long to ship to me, and I'm excited to finally get it. Apparently there's a new Game Boy Color backlit screen project in the works. I saw on Reddit that somebody on Taobao, which is a Chinese reseller, is selling Game Boy Color consoles with a new screen installed. And this screen is supposedly the same aspect ratio, and it has exactly 4 times the pixels as the original. So it preserves the same aspect ratio, so you don't get the weirdness of like the GB Boy Color. And it would obviously look different because the pixels will be smaller, but it is backlit. So I'm really interested to get one, and a few people on Reddit actually figured out how to do it. So you could use stores called Biner or Superbuy, which are basically third-party aggregators that they buy stuff from Taobao, they receive it, then they check it, package it, and ship it to you. So I went and bought one, and I probably wasted a lot of money. I'm sure this is going to cost like $150. So I hope it really is as good as the description says. A few people said that they thought it was the GB Boy Color, but I'm pretty 99% sure it's not. That this is actually a Game Boy Color with a new screen installed. And a few people on Twitter were trying to help as well. So thank you very much for anybody that was trying to do the translations with me. But as soon as I get it in, I'll do a full review, and then I'll probably end up sending it to My Life in Gaming for them to review as well, because they just did an amazing Game Boy episode, so I figured they'd probably want an addendum for it if it's any good. But I'll keep you guys updated. Firebrand X just uploaded the latest version of his color palettes for the NES RGB. So he did a ton of work, and he's come up with many different ones based on your scenario. So if you have a flat screen and you want it to look like a PVM, or if you're gaming on a PVM but you want the colors to look more like they did through composite when we were kids, and there's many different combinations of each. I mean, he did a phenomenal job on it, and I can't tell you how impressed I was with just the one. I think it was called Unsaturated version 6. They're all renamed now because he's got a ton of them, but that one alone was just a massive step up, in my opinion, from some of the ones that were already included on it, ones that were used in emulators before. So if you have a NES RGB, I highly recommend updating it. If you use emulators to play, then you should very easily be able to throw these color palettes in, and hopefully some of the other consoles like the High Def NES and the AVS will support these soon as well. So a huge thank you to Firebrand X for all the work he puts in, because I really appreciate these things. There's another update to the VeriSNES project, the FPGA-based SNES project, and it looks like he got Mode 7 working, which is pretty cool. And I'm just really impressed at the steady progress he's made throughout this. I'm not sure what he's going to do with it when he's done with it, but it's very impressive that something like this is even working as well as it is so far. So huge kudos to him, and I can't wait to see what happens next. Speaking of FPGA consoles, Qwertymodo just dropped a huge piece of news on everybody. He released a jailbreak for the Analog NT Mini, which he designed the guts for, which is an FPGA-based Nintendo console. And the jailbreak first allows you to run NES ROMs on it, which is pretty incredible because that's even more compatible than some ROM carts. I had somebody that owns an NT Mini try out Legend of Link, that game I've been mentioning lately, and that works fine on it, where it will not work on ROM carts. So that alone is pretty awesome. But on top of that, he's going to start releasing different cores for you to load up and play, which means that same FPGA will allow you to play like Atari 2600, ColecoVision, and probably a few others. He said he was going to launch one core a week until he was able to get as many ported over as possible. So if this works well, that basically means that one NES console will be able to output HDMI and RGB for a ton of different consoles. I'm really impressed. I ordered one. It should be here by the end of this week, and I should have a full review by next week. And I'm just really excited to try it out and see what it does for real, because that's a huge announcement. And I guess I'll just update everybody once I get it in. But huge props to Qwertymodo for releasing that. That's amazing. Just goes to show you he really is on the side of all of us retro gamers. So thanks for all your hard work, Kevin. And I can't wait to have you back on to talk about that. Next up, there's an update on the RetroDC powered, which is that one power supply that works with pretty much every retro gaming console. First, they're open for pre-orders again, and it should ship, I believe, around April. And I spoke to Ben, and he had a message for everybody. He said he apologizes for it being a month late, and that he'll extend the warranty from 6 months to a full year for everyone that had to wait. Which I'm smirking because it's only a month late. That's pretty incredible that he's been so rock solid on time, and it's just one guy working on this whole project. So it's he said everybody was really patient and understanding and respectful, and I mean, I'm sure they would be. It's just one guy working on one project, but I absolutely love this thing. And I've never had any problems with it. And in fact, he said that he hasn't had any malfunction yet at all. I actually just bought a second because I want to have one in my rolling cart with my BVM on it all nice and zip tied away. And then I want a second one on my bench top, so when I do video captures or anything else, I don't have to unhook anything. So I highly recommend people pick one up. At the very, very least, this thing will perfectly replace those 3 huge power bricks for Genesis, Sega CD, and 32X. But I use it for everything. I even bought the little adapter to be able to use it on a SNES. And I just leave it in my setup, and I have one console at a time where I just bring the console over, take the RetroDC, plug it in, grab the RGB cable, plug that right into my monitor, and go. So anybody that has a scenario like that, they'd probably want it as well. So definitely pick one up if you need it. Okay, and last in the news, a quick update from Badass Consoles. All right, man, I really appreciate you jumping on very quickly. I just wanted to get a few things straightened out because I've gotten a couple of really, really shitty emails in the past few weeks. And the one that finally drove me to actually bother you and drag you on Skype when you have better things to do was somebody said they jumped on your Twitch stream and saw you playing like Punch-Out or something. And they're like, well, what the hell, dude? I paid, you have all our money and now you're sitting there playing Punch-Out. Why aren't you working on our shit? So I have to admit, as much as this makes me probably sound like an ignorant ass, if I had not worked for a company where I was a big part of the manufacturing chain, I might have had a bit of a pissy attitude about it. I might have said that to your face at a bar over beers when we were joking, but I would have never sent an email that way that came across. But I would have been annoyed, like, where's my stuff? But because I have worked for a manufacturing company and I've seen how these things work, if you have something that has 10 pieces and piece number 3 gets delayed, everything else gets delayed until that's finished. And then you get to piece number 6, and if that's one little thing off, everything stops. So I get it. I get everything that's surrounding that. But from the man himself, would you mind just explaining where you're at with GameCube Video, the time frame that people could expect, and when I can get my demo unit, because I'm also a selfish fuck and I want to review it.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So last week I was in process of doing the certification testing on all the boards, and what that requires is, let me see if I have it here somewhere. I have a test bed that I designed specifically for the GameCube. And the way the test bed works is, let me grab a GCVideo here. So I have the test bed with the new flex that's wired into the test bed. The GCVideo will go right onto the test bed. I'll see if I can get a good shot on the camera. So it would sit right on. Mm-hmm. And from there, that would allow me to test HDMI video output, component video output. It'll SPDIF connection for anybody that wants to add fiber optic audio. So creating the test bed is the most important part of the process in order to validate each and every single board without having to solder each one to a GameCube.
Gotcha.
So the test bed is functional. The flex cables are functional. That has been validated. So that monkey is done.
Good.
Flex cables are working 100% proper. Everything's fine. I think you showed them on video last time, but here's some close-ups for anybody. I don't know how well that's going to come up on the screen. Yep, and I see the cutouts are
properly made.
Yeah, the cutouts are definitely there this time. You can see
the
like
thickness
right
of the cable. They're not flopping over when you're holding them.
Yeah,
so
they're really strong cables this time. They're really good.
Good.
Unlike the crap little ones that I got last time. And so a lot of people are wondering, you send the cables over to company. Why, they said they were going to make them. Why didn't you get them? Right? I find that hard to believe. Why didn't you get them back? Well, I don't know why I didn't get them back. I had to go in and spend another few $1,000s to go to a completely different company and have the cables manufactured. So it would have probably been easier to just cancel the whole thing, refund everybody their money, but at the same time, I was determined to, I'm gonna make this happen. Gonna make it happen. This is gonna be the right way to do it.
Well, just also don't
Um,
forget that the loudest voice isn't normally the majority. It's just the loudest voice. I think you'd
right, the
have
minority.
Yeah,
Right.
I think you have a lot of understanding people that are, of course, frustrated because we all want to play with the new gadget, but
Hmm.
understand where you're going through. And I think the majority of the people would have been really upset if you just canceled it and refunded the money. We'd rather
Yeah,
just wait, and when it comes in, it comes in.
that would have definitely been the worst way to go because there's a lot of people that are definitely excited. There's a lot of people that come in with emails that say, "Oh, hey, great. Okay, yeah. Thanks for the update. I understand." There's a lot of people like that. There's just those couple of people that get really impatient. A guy that makes an order last week and already wants an update on what his order is. So, when something like that happens, I tell the guy that, you're at the very back of the line. It's going to be a while. It really is.
Hmm.
Uh, because, I mean, what else am I going to say? Oh, yeah, just, wait a little bit and it'll be fine. No, up front, you're at the end of the line, dude. It's going to take you a while to get it done. There's like 500 orders in front of you.
Jeez.
So, well, anyway, okay, so the test bed. One of the problems I was having with the test bed is even though the pins were the proper sizing, proper spacing, everything needed to be done, it was not absolutely making the best contact. So what was happening is I was getting possibly 50 attempts to fit the board just to try to validate video, and that kind of process is going to take forever to individually test each and every board.
Right, yeah.
So what I did was I made a small design change to the test bed itself so that I could go about a different manner to perform my validation testing. And right after validation testing is done, that is the last step. Shipping goes out right after that. So as far as like the guy that you said he came on my Twitch stream, saw me playing Punch Out. Sure, I was playing Punch Out. Was he there? Was he there the previous hours? Because I stream at least 10 hours a day.
Yeah.
At least, if anybody, and I say, I'm glad you got me on video here now. If anybody at any time wants to know anything that's going on, if you even have a problem with your order, if you got a question about your order, anything, find me. Twitch TV, Badass Consoles. I'm there. I'm there for at least 10 hours a day, most times. So
I would actually recommend that any nerds that like nerd stuff jump on too, because I've very often put your channel on in the background. Like instead of listening to the radio, I will throw that up on like a second screen. And okay, like when you were doing some of the micro soldering of those actual GameCube video boards itself, it's cool. It's just like having an awesome thing on in the background. So
yeah, a lot of times people come in with just random video game questions, about the console. I help out random people there. Some people, they bring up the FrameMeister OSSE thing. I have both of those right now with me. One user, Syndex, he sent me both of his FrameMeister OSSE, and I was able to do some tests with those yesterday, along with needing to do the audio upgrade to his OSSE.
Mm-hmm.
Oh wow, all the instructions on that.
Yeah, well, that was Bordy just saying, "Here's what I did." He didn't make set instructions. So.
Right, and I didn't see anything that was really available for it. So
yeah.
Hopefully that'll come along. The OSSE performs great. From what I see, it performs great. I like it better than FrameMeister. It's not a.
Me too.
Overall, I think FrameMeister is a better complete product, meaning it has like a full case, surrounded, connections easy to plug in. There's a couple of issues with OSSE, but it can be worked out. It's open source.
Right.
It can be improved upon. But anybody, I'm on Twitch TV, Badass Consoles. People drop in all the time, ask me a question about their order number. Most times it comes down to they didn't read the email where it told them something like, if you ordered Ultra HDMI, you'll get an email soon with shipping information. If you ordered GCVideo, you've been put on an installation queue. A lot of times it just comes out to something simple like that. Some people just didn't read, or they didn't even check to see if they got an email. So a lot of that stuff is just hashed out right then and there live on Twitch. So
Gotcha.
it's real easy to take some minute to look up somebody's order information and get back some information for them on where they're at.
Well, I think
So
that's an easy way to contact you if somebody needs to be proactive about something. And I
right.
think it's, you could go on Twitch for free. I mean, it's not like it's a subscription. You have to sign up, I think, if you want to comment, but it's just another thing. Respectfully, may I offer a small bit of constructive criticism, though?
Sure.
For people who need proactive contact like that, that's, in my opinion, maybe I'm wrong, it's perfectly fine. But this is the day and age of people want information to go to them. So would you be willing to commit to like one tweet a week or something? Just even if it's got the test bed up, things are progressing, just to kind of put to bed all the people who might not be able to jump on Twitch who at least get it.
Well, yeah, assuming people are watching your video, assuming people are even monitoring what about Twitter? What about the ones that don't monitor Twitter, don't watch your video, the ones that just read forums or are only, Reddit only? If it's not on Reddit, they don't see any other information that happens in the world.
So
there's those
I
other
do have
people
a strong opinion about that, and once again, opinion. I'm sure I'm going to piss everybody off by saying this, but I'm not a big Mr. Social Media guy. You'll never see me post on Twitter or Facebook like, "Hey guys, look at this new soft drink I found." Like, it's not me. I use it for information and news. But in the day and age of cell phones and everybody has a device strapped to them at all times, to sign up for a free Twitter account and to follow the people that post only information or occasionally some funny shit, but they're not spammers. I think that if somebody's not willing to do that, they have no right to complain. Well, I only like to go to this forum. All right, well, that's nobody else does, so fine, whatever. But I think that I am a fan of Twitter just because if somebody's really important, you could have it pop up like a text. If somebody spams a lot, you could mute it so they don't even show up, or it's halfway in between. So that is maybe I'm wrong, and if anybody's watching, post in the comments. I just feel like that's a very easy and direct way to just keep everybody in the loop.
I've actually had people sign up to Twitter to follow me directly because I tell them I don't spam. The only time I'm really going to put something up on Twitter is if it's something important, rather than, as you indicate, like, oh, look at the new mouse I got, right?
Yeah, and I do tell
look
everybody,
at what I'm eating today. So,
well, a bunch of people always ask me where and how can I get the Ultra HDMI, and I always tell them follow you guys on Twitter. And the people that listen never complain because they get the notification. I have it set so when you post, a few people actually, it comes as if it were a text, and I never miss out on anything because it comes right to me. I don't have to go and do anything. So it's I feel like if you did that, and the people that need to contact you maybe just go through Twitch, I think that would kind of just silence most of the people with an issue.
Speaking of Twitter, some people are sending me tweets like we'll say their name is Benchtop on Twitter. Okay, their name is Benchtop. That's their name, and they're at console. Benchtop at console. Okay, they send me a tweet. Hey, what's my order number? How am I going to put together any type of information to give you anything you need to know? Yeah. Don't do that. Don't do that. Just don't. No. Sending a tweet on how to get an order status is not really the best way to go unless you're willing to put your order number and any other information, which I suggest you don't do. Not on a tweet.
It's too much for a tweet for any business at all, small to big. It's not something I would recommend anybody does. So
and Yahoo. There was Ultra HDMI, the sale that I just did for Ultra HDMI back in June 9th, I think it was. There was everybody that had a Yahoo email account. The email got returned. It did not go through.
So I've been having a tremendous amount of problems with Yahoo lately as well. I went to send an email to somebody in France. I was actually replying, so I know I got the address correct. It bounced back immediately, said, undeliverable. So I just resent it. Worked fine. I was using my wife's iPad, just kind of just skimming through shit. I'm like, oh, let me email myself something. I forgot about it, and 3 days later, I'm sitting working during the day, and the email pops up as if it was just sent. So there is an issue lately with Yahoo emails, and I think it's especially for people that use private domains. So I'm, RetroRGB.com, but my email account goes through Google. So it's, I think that's a big issue with it. But yeah, people with Yahoo email accounts, that's another thing. So,
right.
But
so
that's great that you have Twitch. Then you know what I mean. If somebody from Yahoo says, I genuinely have sent Michael like 4 emails, jump on Twitch. Then it could very well just be that they got misplaced through Yahoo servers.
Yeah, I had that exact same thing happen like 3 or 4 times already. People drop by the Twitch and say, "Hey, I haven't received the email." I told them, "Are you on Yahoo?" Every single one was yes. It's great. Okay, give me like a Gmail account, Hotmail account. Give me something else. Send them the email right then and there, or like the next day later.
Gotcha.
But I mean, at least we were able to establish that quick, open communication right there on Twitch Live. And like I said, I'm there like about 10 hours a day.
Yeah.
So and the time zones that I stream in would be like evening in the US through like morning in Europe.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So that way I'm almost able to reach globally during my streaming hours.
Gotcha. Yeah, it should work out. I mean, I feel like that should be good enough for everybody to work around. You tweet basic updates. People email for things that are, it's email. You'll get to it when you get to it. And if it's something important, or if your emails aren't getting through, go into Twitch. Or if you just want to watch a fun Twitch stream, go into Twitch.
Mm-hmm.
So,
right.
Yeah, I feel like that's a fair way. And, you can't make everybody happy, but the people that still complain, unless it's the rare valid reason, I don't know. I don't take much stock in people when somebody's putting forth the effort to make something like this happen, when people complain like that. So
yeah, I don't. Yes, it bothers me, but I also understand, like, there's just those people, because for every one of those, there's about 20 others that are like, hey, cool, no problem,
yeah,
great, take your time. I'd rather have a product that's absolutely the way it needs to be, rather than something just got hashed out and thrown out a back door.
Couldn't agree more. So now that your test bed's working, when do you think that you'll be able to start the first shipments of them?
The test bed just went through a redesign.
Right.
So the test bed just went through a redesign, and that's coming in this Friday from
okay.
Osh Park, yeah. So I was doing a test bed checking, confirmation validation testing last week on stream. And that's when I started having issues, noticing the issues with the test bed. So spent another stream just redoing the design on the test bed, sent that off. That should come back in this Friday. So if it does come in this Friday to Osh Park, then they got to ship it out. They're expecting to receive it Friday. I'm not expecting to receive it Friday.
Okay.
So they're expecting to receive it Friday. I should get it Monday, Tuesday. As soon as that thing gets in, drop it in, solder it up, start doing more testing. Then I'll know absolutely for sure. Okay, great. This is good to go. Everything's good to go. Start putting everything in motion.
Gotcha. Okay. So if you just want to, whenever those minor things happen, if you just want to fire up a tweet and keep everybody in the loop, this is good. I mean, it's it's amazingly clear, the progress, the wait, why we're waiting, what we're waiting for. It makes perfect sense to me. Hopefully after seeing this video, it'll make sense to everybody else as well. So
right. Well, it might not, but we can hope.
Yep. I mean, like I said, if I hadn't been there in that other company and I hadn't experienced it for myself, I don't know that I would fully understand what's going on right now. So I give everybody the benefit of the doubt for that one, because I would have probably been, feeling the same way. But hopefully short little updates and videos like this will bring people up to speed and just, help people understand, I guess.
Right.
Cool. All right. Well, as always, thanks, and I can't wait to see what comes next. And
speaking of what's coming next, did you happen to catch my video from a couple of days ago when I did the 64?
No. Do you want to make an announcement yet?
Well, I don't know if I want to make an announcement. I had to redesign the board because it was good. It was good, but I found some improvements I could make just on the actual layout of the design. But essentially, what the board does is, all straight from your 64 controller. Okay.
Okay.
So at the push of a button, you can overclock your console. Of course, it goes through a reset mode. It has to
Oh
reset no
yeah,
matter
yeah.
what. No matter what, it has to reset the CPU. So, but you don't have to get up. So if you want to overclock your console, you press in a button command, another command, a confirmation, and it resets into the new clock speed. If you're playing a game, your Pokemon, you're outmatched, I'm gonna reset. So you can reset in-game reset from your controller. Don't even have to get up. Another thing that I've put into the board design was a replacement front LED for the 64.
Mm-hmm.
You can adjust the colors whatever you want using the analog stick.
That's very
So
cool.
if you have that special shade of blue that you need that you can't find in a regular LED, you go out and buy blue LEDs and you put them on. It's like, it's not quite the blue that I need. Well, you can fine tune the color with the analog stick and get that shade that you want.
That's kind of awesome.
So whether you want like a blue, a green, purple, red, orange, and I'm doing that for the NES, and I'm going to bring it to Super Nintendo and GameCube also. But I mean, there's really no need for it. But
Have
I
you
just might
have
as
you
well.
tested the overclock with the Ultra HDMI? Does that affect that at
It
all?
works. It works. It's fine.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, yeah. So you can, because you're overclocking the CPU.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So this is so whatever the CPU is doing is gonna move everything forward to the RCP.
Mm-hmm.
So it's fine. Yes, you can overclock and have Ultra HDMI at the same time. It doesn't affect audio like you would expect on the old NES.
Right. It would make the
Upclock.
audio.
You try to upclock, and then the audio pitch is a little bit off.
Right.
It doesn't do that. It does not do that. It's perfect audio.
That's really awesome. So, all right. Any time frame for that?
Those test boards are gonna come back Friday. Um, I'll probably have them by Tuesday, and yeah, and that'll be ready to go.
Awesome. Well,
So,
thank you.
not ready to go. That's just to confirm that
Confirm that it works.
the new design works,
Oh,
and
okay.
then send off a bulk batch. So, but a bulk batch to get PCBs, and it's like 2 weeks.
Gotcha. All right. Well, thank you very much for the update.
Yeah.
Okay, on to the Q&As. So still a lot of Nintendo Switch speculation in the comments and through a few emails and stuff. I mean, it's really hard to say anything for something that hasn't been released to the public yet. I did pre-order one. I did through Target, so I don't know if it's going to get here on launch day, but the day I get it, I'll probably have a review up in a few days that's just like a launch day review, because it's not fair to review any console on day one. I mean, they're just getting started. But, I mean, there was a lot of great opinions and a lot of great opposing opinions in the comments. I know Dan posted a long thing that I thought was great. And I do love opposing opinions. I mean, Dan actually, I see him every couple of weeks post something that, we don't always agree on stuff, but I love his opinions. I hope he keeps posting them. But there were a few really sensitive Nintendo fanboys that, I mean, I don't get the whole brand loyalty thing. It exists. It exists in all manners of retail. But the only thing I care about when it comes to video games is that I enjoy my game. That's it. I don't care who it comes from or where it comes from. And just for the record, I had somebody email me and say, "Why do you hate the Switch?" I mean, you can't hate something that doesn't really exist to the public yet. I don't hate anything. The only perspective I have on the Switch, a lot of things I said came across the wrong way. Some things I may have said the wrong way, and for that I apologize. Anything that fell out of my stupid mouth the wrong way. But my only opinion on the Switch, preconceived, is that I wish I was more excited about some of the specs, but all that matters is the games. So, if I don't really want to keep up any more speculation, because I'll get it soon enough. We all will. And after we get it, let's hash it out and talk more about it. But I guess it's a touchy subject, and a lot of people commented. A lot of good comments. A lot of very sensitive comments, and then a lot of behind the scenes emails. People weren't happy with some of the things I said, but hey. I'm just me, sorry. But yeah, I mean, always though, don't ever hold back any of the comments, any discussions, opposing opinions, all that stuff. I love it. Keep it coming. Just maybe keep a bit of an open mind, and I will try my hardest to do so as well. Okay, next up, Daryl Christie had a question. He asked, "What's the best non-one chip Super Nintendo?" So any of the two chip SNESs. Um, to be honest, I don't know, and I should have been paying attention all these years. The problem is a lot of the testing I've done has changed because I found much better ways since day one to do comparisons. Even just a few weeks ago, which I'm sure I'll have a video on that soon, I've found like the best way I've possibly found so far to test different SNES versions. So I really should have been keeping track, but I don't really know what's the best non one chip version. Bordy actually chimed in. Bordy has done a ton of research into the SNES and has a bunch of awesome mods. And his perspective is try to find a console with chipset 111, which should only be present on very early SHVC CPU mainboards with very low serial numbers. I don't remember which ones of those I've tested. The only thing I do remember is the one that I tested that seems to have been the worst, excuse me, is SNES CPU GPM 02. And with each pause was a dash in there if you're looking it up. Maybe I just so happened to stumble across two consoles that had bad caps or something, but those were the ones that were consistently like really bad. I talked to Steve from HD Retrovision on a regular basis. He's had a couple over the years that were also consistently terrible. And he even notices some of the differences between the two chip versions. Like he could take a screenshot, and based on the interference, he's like, "Oh yeah, that's the." We had that conversation one time. It's pretty awesome, actually. So I don't know. There is a bunch of people working on many different ways to try to improve the two chips, but none of them are great. None of them are easy, and you still today don't get the quality you get out of a one chip or a mini. The only downsides are there are a few weird glitches on some games, and somebody still claims that Star Fox runs slower. I don't notice it. I love Star Fox. I played as best I can, not played through it a couple of times, and I don't really notice a difference. But maybe I'm totally wrong about that. But it's my strong opinion that if you love the SNES, you get a modded mini or one chip, and you get a two chip just for all those things that might bug you about those other games. And then kind of just wait for somebody to invent something better. Maybe the better is an FPGA based one, which, who knows how long it'll take for that to come about. But or if you're just a casual SNES fan, or if you really really like it but you don't obsess over it like me, just get a great one chip or mini and you'll be totally happy. So I'm sorry I couldn't directly answer your question, but hopefully I was able to get enough info in. Next, Mad asked, is the Pi 2 SCART or RGB Pi a good option for MAME on an RGB monitor? Could you use an arcade-style controller on it, and what would the total cost be of that kind of setup? That's actually my preferred way to do it nowadays. I like both of those, the Pi 2 SCART and the RGB Pi. At the moment, I would recommend the Pi 2 SCART, but the RGB Pi is amazing and making really great progress. I'm only saying the Pi 2 SCART just because I don't want to use the word generic because Arcade Forge did a great job on it, but it's just an overall good solution for everything. You don't need custom anything. And arcade-style controllers, it really just, as long as there's a USB interface, it'll work with both. There's one other Raspberry Pi project that's designed to also work with existing analog controllers, but there's no solid release date on that. As far as arcade-style controllers go, you can find cheap ones that I guess would be starter controllers that will work as long as they're USB based. My personal advice on that is just buy anything cheap to see if it's a novelty for you or if it's something you really want to use. Me personally, I have an X Arcade Solo, which is good. You know, a lot of people hate it. I like it. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. But that was meant to be my starter controller, my spare. I'm having my friend Ben make me a real arcade quality controller with a spinner and a stick and all the buttons, and that's probably going to be a couple $100 at least. But now you're talking actual arcade style controller, like really good quality. So the cost is actually the thing that I'm most happy about. To get a kit that comes with a power supply and a case and everything, the Raspberry Pi is going to run about $50. Then if you want to get a Pi to SCART, or the RGB Pi is about the same. After shipping, you're looking at about $40. I would always recommend a really good micro SD card. The ones I use are probably overkill, but they're going to be like $30 each. So, excuse me, you're looking at $150, including a cheap, okay arcade controller. But as far as comparing it to like a full PC setup, Linux or Windows, unless you have all the parts already laying around, unless you happen to have a video card that's compatible with CRT-MU driver, I really feel like that's way cheaper. If you have to buy all new parts, it definitely is. If you have an extra PC laying around, maybe you could just use that for free. But the setup is the thing that I always really kind of felt strongly about. It's not easy to set up an arcade machine. Some people say it is, but these are also IT guys. To set up a Pi using something like Laka or the RGB Pi software itself, we're talking 20 minutes. I have a guide up on my site with a video. Even if you watch the whole video, then it's 30 minutes. So it's just really easy. You load the image, you load your ROMs, and you configure the controller, and you're going. Whereas, I've spent hundreds and hundreds of hours doing the PC side, both Linux and Windows. So the short answer to your question is, it's my personal opinion that yes, the RGB mods to a Pi, meaning any of those boards on a Sony PVM, is an excellent solution. The games I play seem to work great. It's emulation. You're always going to get a minimum of 2 frames of lag. But I love the first Mortal Kombat, and I love Outrun, and a few other classics like that. They all play perfect. And some people legitimately want to play games that are a little too new for it, because it's impossible for the Raspberry Pi to be as powerful as a fully dedicated video card. But generally speaking, I've had great success, and I strongly recommend it. So I hope that was a decent answer to your question. Next, Uzmaki82 asked, have you noticed the inflated prices for consumer CRTs on eBay? No. Is that a thing now? eBay's so weird. You have access to buying and selling things from around the planet, which is amazing. I've gotten so many wonderful things on eBay that I could have never gotten anywhere else. But then you get crazy sellers on there. You always deal with them. Just a few weeks ago, we talked about the guy selling a one chip for $750. But I don't know if that's a thing anywhere else. I still, one of my good friends, Justin, aka the Goodwill Hunter, that's one of his favorite hobbies, thrifting and finding good deals on stuff. And he consistently finds good CRTs in Goodwills for nothing, $20, $40. I still see him around the New York area, in the suburbs, just draw a huge circle around New York City for free or pretty cheap on Craigslist. The only thing I would suggest is, if you're paying for something specific, a widescreen XBR Sony, which I think is perfect for like those 6th generation consoles, like the PS2 and Xbox. There's a lot of 480i games, but there's also a lot of 480p, some widescreen. Great, I'd pay $100 for that. Or ones that were known to be great for RGB modding. So my friend Jose Cruz, who's CruzLink2 on Twitter. I hope I didn't get that wrong, but he mods those on a regular basis now. He's done a handful of them. So when I say those, consumer grade CRTs. So if there was one that he said that, yes, this is a good one to use, I would very happily pay extra for that. But generally speaking, if somebody's just looking for a beat up CRT to use, or even a good quality one, I still wouldn't pay more than $50 for it. Like a good Sony with a curved tube and component inputs, you could find those all day around me. And they're a great option for, I always tell people that want to get started in this, I get a lot of like, well, I don't know if it's nostalgia, I just want to try it. Go buy a Genesis. get HD Retrovision's cables and plug it into the component input of any CRT. Then get a SNES and get an S-Video cable and plug it into the S-Video input. And there you go. You have your starter kit, if you will. So, no, I haven't noticed the inflated prices, and I would just completely ignore it. And I would never pay it unless it was one of those specific scenarios I just mentioned. Next, Sean Hogan asked an OSSC-related question. He said he doesn't want to mod his childhood N64, so he was planning on hooking it up via S-Video. And he wanted to know if there was an S-Video to SCART adapter that would work. So I have kind of two answers to that question. First, there's a bunch of different S-Video to RGB converters I've seen. My buddy James tried one, I think the most popular one, and he said it sucked. It said it barely worked. He was using it with a Commodore 64. I actually think Matt from Video Game Perfection tested the same one, and he agreed he didn't like it. I believe there's an Extron one that people seem to think work okay. But generally speaking, I haven't found one that's definitely perfect. So I don't think I would count on converting S-Video to RGB SCART to go into an OSSC. And also, just in case you don't know, those adapters that you see that have an S-Video input in it, so it's just a dongle with S-Video to SCART, that's just a pass-through. That doesn't convert it, so that's not compatible with the OSSC. So I'm sorry, if somebody knows a good, reliable S-Video to RGB converter, please post in the comment, but I got nothing there. And as far as, I understand not wanting to mod your childhood N64. I've become really finicky about certain mods with certain consoles. I never want to cut plastic anymore unless it's absolutely necessary. But all the mods you can do on an N64, the RGB ones, you don't cut any plastic, and they're all 100% reversible. So whether you have one of the original ones that can do the simple RGB mod, that's 3 wires and Voltar's board, and if you ever wanted to take that out, it's equally as easy. And if you have one of the later ones, you could put excuse me, you could put Tim's board in it, and it's a little harder to install and take out. But if you ever wanted to just put it back to stock, you could put it exactly back, so it looks completely unmodded. So I would say just go for it and do it, and just, don't trust the eBay modders. Have a good, reputable person do it. I really need to get a trusted modders page on my site. I recommend people on each mod page, but I think I should just get a page up with people that have proven good work. So if you have anybody that you already know, let me know. Or cool, and if not, let me know, and I'll try to point you in the right direction for good modders. And lastly, Qwertymodo posted in regards to making the MSU1 audio files. And I put a link in the description to one of his videos that actually is kind of like a tutorial on how to make the looping audio files for it, which is so super helpful. Thank you so much, dude, for making that. And he also has links in that video's description for the tools that you need. I know I talked to Mikael. Maybe I got it this time. But I talked to him last week about it, and we talked about tools, and Qwertymodo has the links to all those in that video. So if anybody's interested, definitely check it out. Okay, up next, I have an interview with René from DB Electronics. A huge apology to everyone watching this one. I was still really sick when I did it, and I was trying so hard not to just go crazy and cough into the mic. I kept hitting the mute button and everything, and there were a few times that we would have a conversation and there would be an awkward pause, and I would just kind of do one of these and then start talking, and it was because I was trying to stop myself from going into a crazy coughing fit. So I don't feel like I gave René the respect or gave him the shit that he deserved. I liked the interview. I always love talking to my friends on here too. I hope you guys enjoy it, and I hope to have him back on when I'm not sick and I could be a little more lively and fun. So he still talked about a bunch of really great stuff. I really enjoyed it. We went through a bunch of cool topics, and he will definitely be back on soon, hopefully when I'm not still really crazy sick and coughing like I still have been this entire podcast. I probably did about 40 takes of some of these just because I kept going into coughing fits during some of them. So, see you guys next week. As always, keep all the comments coming. I love to hear everybody's opinions and perspectives on things, and see you guys soon. Hey guys, I am here with my friend René from DB Electronics. How you doing, man?
I'm doing well. You?
Good. Well, I'm going to start us out right. I have here a glass with ice in it and absinthe.
Oh
In
shit.
fact, it's Marilyn Manson's Absinthe, which at first I was like, why would I want that? But then I realized that guy throws himself into every project he does. Here's the trick, though. So when you pour it in, so it's this color that's greenish clear. And then you kind of let it sit for a while, and I'll show you what that looks like in a few minutes. But it's a little nuts. I love this stuff. But
Whoa. Well, I'll join you with my beer.
there you go. Oh, I got a backup beer too for later. Yeah, there's a liquor store in New York City that's off the beaten path if you don't live in the city. But when you do live in the city, you take advantage of shit like this. So I went down, and they have a wall of absinthe, and everybody there knows everything about all their liquors. They're like, they get really into it. So I ended up leaving the store one day with like $350. I have 4 bottles of it, different kinds, and this was the first one I opened, was the Marilyn Manson one, which it's not bad, but it's not the best for any absinthe connoisseurs. So
Huh. I wouldn't know. I've never tried that. Although I leave with hundreds of dollars worth of India Pale Ale usually, but
yeah, I like all kinds of booze. I think I'm one of the few people that actually really enjoys the taste too. So I don't just like getting a buzz going. I actually, I enjoy all the different kinds. So
actually, it's funny you should mention that. I actually just like the taste, and I never drink to feel the buzz. As soon as I start feeling it, I stop drinking. So
no, really?
yeah.
Well, it depends on my mood. I'm one of those people where I can completely enjoy a glass of wine and fine, but some nights I want many bottles of wine and then strap in for a 3D movie and then go. So, but yeah, well, I've been wanting to talk to you for a while. As you can see, I'm still getting off a cold, but luckily this Blue Yeti microphone has a mute button on it, so hopefully I won't be coughing into the mic at all. But yeah, geez, I don't even know where to start. I think I don't even remember how I met you. I think I must have emailed you out of the blue because of one of your inventions. I think it must have been the power base converter that you made.
I think so. Wasn't our first conversation about doing the 3D glasses on the FM power base, something like that, right?
It must have been. That was a couple years ago. How'd you make
Yeah.
out on that?
I'm well. See, I figured out that there's several protocols that the new 3D glasses use for I mean the wireless ones, right? They've got different infrared protocols to trigger the shutters. I figured that much out, and I need to get some board space on the FM power base converter to actually run an infrared LED and try to figure out some method of letting the user change between different protocols, because it would kind of be like a universal remote controller you get at Walmart, right? You'd have to cycle through a bunch of different protocols until you find the one that triggers your
Right.
pair of 3D glasses.
So we kind of just jumped straight to the end here. So that is right. That is how we met. I've had this strange obsession since I was a kid with the Sega Master System 3D games. I think I had a neighbor that was just one of those natural-born salesmen, and when the Genesis came out, he sold me his Master System because the guy could sell ice to an Eskimo, and he got me so excited about it. And most of the games he gave me with it were junk, but I remember playing Space Harrier 3D on some crappy old TV, and I was blown away. I absolutely loved it. And I think ever since then, and there is, out of the, 7 or 8 games, like 4 of them are great. Really, really great. So I've kind of had an obsession with this. And I've always had the idea to try to get everything through the Genesis just to make one less thing to deal with. So that's right. I contacted you seeing if you could wire in the circuit for that 3.5 millimeter headphone jack directly into the power base converter that you built. But I think there was a power issue or something, right? It might cause issues with the FM chip for the FM version.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I mean, a good layout, it wouldn't happen, but the original adapter on Sega Master System for those 3D glasses, it does have a charge pump on it, and it feeds 12 volts to the glasses, and it's shuttering a 12 volt signal. And the reason why I tended to go towards the infrared path is because the YM2413, the FM chip on there, is already pretty damn noisy, and I had a really hard time in 4 different board spins before I was able to tone the noise down from it. So I'd really hate to put a 12 volt charge pump on there and start my noise hunt all over again.
Yeah, I hear you. So, how did you get started doing all this stuff? I mean, you have some pretty crazy designs up on your website. These aren't just basic let's solder some pin converters together. I mean, you you went pretty in depth with a lot of it. How'd you get started in electronics? Do you have an electrical engineering degree or something, or are you just a hobby nerd like myself?
No, I have an electrical engineering degree. I worked in the industry in Ottawa for about 5 years, and during that time, I wasn't really interested in bringing my work home or doing any kind of tinkering at home. But I moved away from Ottawa now 5 years ago, and I did a bunch of odd jobs which had nothing to do with electronics until I landed my current job, which is system administrator. But I was aching to do electronics works, right? So I decided to start tinkering at home after work to simply not to lose any of my knowledge, any of my skill set. And I had a bunch of video games, right? So I decided, hey, well, might as well attack some of these problems, right? So the first one I made, as you know, is the power base converter. And my motivation for that was simply, well, I wanted to buy one, and I thought that the eBay prices were kind of ridiculous.
Yeah.
I looked at what this thing was, and it's just a pass-through, right? I mean,
It's
the
a pass
original
through with a few components on it, but you say, it's funny. You say it's just a pass through, but I've seen so many just not work over the years, and I assume it's probably just one of the few capacitors it has on it probably leaked out, just like the rest of everything, the caps and Sega consoles. But yeah, so it's not only are you spending a lot of money on something, it might not even work for more than a week when you get it.
And it only works in your Model 1, right? So.
Well, it only fits in the Model 1. It
Yeah.
only fits nicely. It'll work perfectly in a CDX. If you do the mod, it'll work perfectly in a Model 3. I think it's really just the Model 2 that it bumps up against the back.
Yeah, and now I might be hearing some viewers screaming that it's not really a pass-through because there's an IC on there. There is a gal chip on the original power base converter, and all it does is there's like a small BIOS in there that sets up the stack for the Z80.
Mm-hmm.
But through experimentation, I found out for like 99% of the games, you don't need to set up the stack because properly written software will set up its own stack, right? You're not going to depend on the Sega Master System doing it all for you.
So do you know which games are not compatible with the standard Master System to Genesis adapters then?
I would have remembered which ones like 2 or 3 years ago when I designed it.
So obviously not the popular ones then.
Yeah, I want to say I had a hard time booting R-Type, but I might be wrong.
Okay.
I remember that was one that I was testing with when I did the FM power base, because the FM has that little BIOS to set up the stack, like we're mentioning.
That's right. So I get kind of a dumb question, but you're here, so whatever. A lot of these adapters, and I don't mean yours. I'm thinking in my head of all the pass-through adapters, and the one I actually am thinking of is the Master System to SG-1000 one. Why are they so tall? Especially the ones with no components on it. They really are just a pin pass-through. Is there any reason for that? I mean, obviously, they can't be too short or you couldn't push the cartridge down or it hit the plastic. But why are so many of these pass-throughs tall? Because yours are pretty neat and tidy, to be honest. It's about the size of a Game Genie, right?
Yeah. Well, I made mine the size it is so that it fits in a Genesis shell, right?
Mm-hmm.
The first version I made was as short as it had to be to fit in a Model 1, because the Model 1's the plastic casing's a bit higher than the Model 2.
Mm-hmm.
Then I realized, oh, this is stupid. I should make it fit in a cartridge cell. But for the ones you're talking about, the SG-1000, I actually haven't seen one of those, so I couldn't say why it's taller or not.
It's not just that, though. It's just very often I've seen over the internet, especially with hobby projects, they're just 2 or 3 times as long as they need to be, and I never understood. Is it just easier to make like that? Cheaper? Was there an electrical reason? I can't imagine the longer the traces, the better. I think it's always the opposite with analog, pretty much, right?
Yeah. I mean, you don't want to put antennas in your design for no reason.
Right, exactly. So the power base converter that you made, that was like your first thing. And, what was the follow-up? Was the next thing just the one with the FM built in?
No, I went for the Sega CD backup RAM cart after that.
Same reason, I'm assuming, because they were really expensive on eBay.
Yeah, but I decided to tinker a bit more with that. See, I actually didn't have an original, and I mean, there were some schematics online, but they weren't really agreeing with each other. Some of them had an HC138, some of them had an HC139, and that's the an address decoder.
Mm-hmm.
And so I found some really high-res board scans. So actually, instead of putting my faith in those schematics that people had drawn, I looked at the board scans and I drew out the schematic for myself because there was a nice picture of the front and a nice picture of the back.
Mm-hmm.
And then I realized that there was a register on that chip, on the board, that was outputting a certain number when the Sega CD was addressing it. And I thought, whoa, hey, what happens if you change that number, right? And that way I discovered that I could increase the size of the backup RAM card like that.
Huh. That's pretty cool. So now this is still the volatile memory with a battery in it, right?
That's right, yeah.
Were you experimenting at one point to try to make it on an SD card or something like that? Didn't you mess around with that just to see if it was possible?
Well, I'm looking at the Sega CD BIOS disassembly right now. I'm trying to find, and I've read this somewhere online, but I can't. I'm bookmarked it somewhere and I can't find it. But I've read somewhere that the Sega CD BIOS looks for ROM on the Sega CD backup RAM card for functions to use the backup RAM. And if there's none, then it just assumes it's SRAM and it writes to it. So what that means, if I dumb it down a bit, is that you could theoretically put some sort of flash chip on there instead, and then provide functions to write to the flash, because writing to flash is not the same as writing to SRAM. And then you could get away by not using a battery that way.
Interesting.
So you'd have to put some kind of 68,000 code in there to tell the Sega CD how to use that memory.
You know, the only reason that pops to mind is because I have two Sega CDs, and both the battery is always dead. And I put a brand new battery in, and I never leave my Sega CD plugged in ever. So the battery dies very quickly. So luckily I have a RAM cartridge, because otherwise, I mean, it would just all my save games would just be disappeared every time I turned it on. So, but
well, I'm not sure if you read. I wrote a post on my website maybe 2 years ago, and I'm not actually sure that I translated it to my new website. But I had changed the SRAM in a Sega Saturn for a FRAM chip, right? That's a chip that doesn't need a battery backup.
Maybe that's what I was thinking of. Maybe it was the Saturn thing that I read. Yeah.
I'm fairly certain the same mod can be done in a Sega CD, right? So you can actually increase the size of the memory internal to the unit without screwing with the BIOS, but you can definitely change the memory type. And if you would be able to put a FRAM chip in there instead, then you wouldn't need a battery.
I still think the best option is an optical drive emulator for the Sega CD.
That's right. I hope somebody comes up with that.
Yeah, definitely. Especially because those things, they're so hard to ship. Just shipping them alone, roll the dice and see if it's gonna survive. And they're starting to really just fall apart over the years. So.
Yeah, I have a couple of Model 1 Sega CDs, and they're just kind of on the shelf for show. I keep changing the belts in them every once in a while. Some of them have the Archimedes screw that's destroyed. I had to add some plastic in there, but sadly I have
a
to
Model
play with
1
the
and a Model
2s.
2, and I think the one that works by far the best is built into my CDX. It just, what a neat little compact device that thing was.
I still need to get one of those.
It's you have to, because you're a Sega fan, even even though you probably won't use it as much, because obviously, when you're playing Genesis games, you want to play it on the $30 console you could replace easily, not the $250 one that's rare, but for Sega CD at least, it's pretty cool. So now I'm assuming Sega's your favorite console because of all the different products you have based around it, right?
Well, I keep saying online that I'm a Sega fanboy, and I just do projects for Sega mostly. But when I was a kid, I was pure Nintendo.
The original or Super Nintendo?
Or both? Both. Yeah, I'm old enough to have played a lot of NES before the SNES came out, and I had a Genesis and a SNES, and I by far favored the SNES when I was a kid. The reason I do a lot of projects for Sega is because the Sega's, from an engineering point of view, it's such a nicer console. There's no screwing around with memory mappers or banking or all that bullshit. It's it's a nice microcomputer design, and I like it.
Yeah, and I imagine there's a lot more documentation floating around for it too, because of they had a lot of the off-the-shelf parts, whereas Nintendo was everything proprietary.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, there's a lot of PCs at the time that had the same processor, right? So there was no shortage of knowledge for the 68K.
Ooh, sorry. So now you have those, and then what other Sega things do you have in the works now? I'm trying to think on your. Let me pull up your website in front of me here. But and I'll put the link in the description. But for the people that don't know, you're DB Electronics, so it's db-electronics.ca.
Yeah.
So FM power base mini, and your RAM cart. And then, of course, the other thing that I was always a fan of that I've been pimping out for you for a while because I just think it's a great solution is the graphics booster.
Yeah, that's right.
The only problem that I have with the DB graphics booster is that unless somebody's a big fan of the TurboGrafx 16, they won't get the reference. So, like, I almost have to explain, like, when I talk about it, it's like, okay, this is an RGB box for a TurboGrafx or PC Engine. Like, the name doesn't give it away, you know? But yeah, so that's the reason I love that. Well, two reasons is first of all because it actually works right. Because there's so many solutions out there that especially some guys that slap stuff together on the forums and sell it that are not good. Now that's not a backhanded comment towards some of the forum guys. There are some guys on there that have been working their asses off and doing great designs for years. I'm not trying to shit on their work, but I think we've all seen the ones where it almost looks like somebody cut apart a board with a hole puncher and then soldered some stuff on it, and some pretty bad stuff out there. So when I came across yours, it worked perfect. I loved it. But also there's no modding. So, most people in the retro gaming scene, believe it or not, don't want to mod. They just want to play their games the way they're meant to be played. So just the fact that you get to plug it in and it works is really awesome. But not only that, you included now correct me if I'm wrong, but you included the Sony CX8 chip that takes the RGB signal and makes its own composite in S-Video. But then you also have the composite from the console, so people could choose whichever one their eyes prefer, if they could even see a difference.
Yeah, that's right. This CXA 1645, it's the same chip that you find in the Sega Saturn, actually.
In some of the later model Genesis consoles, right? Like the 3?
I think so, yeah. I'm not familiar with the 3, and I don't actually own one, but I think I've read that.
You got one now sitting on your shelf in the box I sent you.
Oh, that's right. You're right, yeah. It's right there, yeah. Yep. Sorry, I kicked the box.
Yeah, but, yeah, so how did that...
So like you said, it's my main motivation for the graphics booster was modless. As I was reading forum posts and instructionals and whatnot online, I saw these hack jobs that you're talking about, right? People are putting some god awful circuits in their PC engines and their turbo graphics. I mean, even now, you can go on eBay and search for a turbo booster replacement, and you'll find this awful amplifier.
Yeah,
right.
We'll come back to that because I have questions for you about that.
Okay,
but, continue.
That's god awful. I wouldn't even use that as a paperweight because it's so damn awful, right? But
so
like I said,
want to design this, and it was the same thing. There wasn't something good and affordable out there for you.
It was. No, this one, it wasn't about good and affordable. Like I said, it was about being modless, right? I had seen some solutions where some guys made a cable and it plugged to the back, but they were just kind of passively routing the composite and the audio signals to RCA jacks, right?
Well, there was 2 or 3 cables, and some of them contained the amp and the circuitry on the console side. And as far as I know, I've never tested one in person, but people that I trust, they were both European manufacturers. People that I would trust normally out there said that there was no complaints, nothing crazy, but there was somebody else that had just a bare adapter on the console, and all of the amp and circuitry was in the SCART head, which is not good at all. So
yeah, it's way too far away from the console. So my first design of that actually didn't include the CXA 1645. It was just a THS, like the 7314.
Yeah, you were one of the first people that said, hey, how come the CXA is sharper than the 7314? And
I like it better. Yeah.
Yeah, and at the time I was thinking, well, maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but this thing is readily available and I could shove it in my Mini and make a great installation. But you were one of the catalysts for me going, why isn't this as sharp as it could be? It's a brand new chip. And that was actually, I think it was Bordy who found the 7374. Well, found, I mean, it's been on the market for a long time, but Bordy was the one that actually explained about the internal filters and everything. And so, yeah, it's you certainly had an eye for it from the beginning, because the CX8 definitely is sharper.
And it was kind of a fluke why I started using that chip is because when I had the first revision of Graphics Booster, which had the 7314 in it, I posted on Sega 16, and I said, hey, I got this modless way of getting RGB amplified out of the TurboGrafx, and it's got audio and whatnot. And then Joe Redifer from GameStack, he posted, hey, wouldn't it be great if you had S-Video? And I kind of went, oh, shit, my board's obsolete right away. Because for most of us North Americans, right, if you got a CRT, it's probably easier to plug in S-Video than anything else, right?
Yeah.
So I said, okay, well, I started hunting for a chip for S-Video, and then I found this chip was used in the Sega Saturn and, like you said, in the Genesis 3. So I, just looked at the app note, really. I mean, that's how all these video designs are done for those Sony chips anyways. They figured out the work for you in the data sheet, so.
So, well, first of all, this is what I was talking about. That's, see how well, you probably can't, it's a different camera. See how that color change? That's how you know the absinthe is working. Changes color, chemicals kick in, that's what gives you the buzz.
How strong is that?
If you were to just take a shot of it, it's as strong as your average, very strong, like, schnapps liqueur. But, putting the ice on it and waiting for it to turn that color, that's what gives you a kind of better buzz. It's almost like, it's not quite like smoking a joint. It's almost like you're in the room with somebody who just did, and then you're drinking beer. So, but
secondhand smoking a joint.
Exactly. But I always liked it. It tastes weird, But sorry about that. So I just so that kind of sums up the graphics booster. But I mean, it's a little bit more involved than that, because how come your design, like, did you actually, I mean, you had to have sit there with an oscilloscope and kind of checked every single signal, because when you're routing through the CXA, you still have to put components on this S-Video and composite ends, right? It's not just direct from the chip to the port, is it?
Well, deceivingly enough, the CXA does most of the work for you, right? You input RGB to it, and then you gotta. I mean, you do have to calculate a few things, but it's like I said, it's mostly app note copying and putting it on your board. And you do have to get a good layout, though. I mean, you can't just route signals every now and then, or press the auto route button on your PCB layout software. You have to be smart about it. But no, I mean, if somebody's telling you, oh well, it's a big secret design, well, no, it really isn't. It's in the data sheet.
Cool. So now that is now available directly from you, and also through Stone Age Gamer. And aren't they selling that with a case now as well?
Yeah. I designed the board so that it fits inside a standard Hammond enclosure.
Okay. And
Ryan over at Stone Age Gamer, he programmed his CNC to cut out the holes perfectly for that.
That's cool.
Yeah, they call it the engine block AV, I think.
That's pretty neat. I like that.
Will
they be selling just the case on there as well, or just the whole thing as a package?
He tells me once he's filled his pre-orders that he will sell the case individually as well.
That's great, because a lot of us that have been using it for a long time, my buddy Justin, he's the one that gets all the good deals by going to the different thrift stores and stuff. He loves it, but he doesn't leave his TurboGrafx out on display, because he just, he likes when everything looks all uniform and neat. And, all of us nerds have at least a little bit of OCD in us, so I'm sure we understand what that's like. But so I totally get it. He's been bugging me since day one, like, hey, when are you going to get me a case for that thing? I want to make sure, I want it to look pretty in my game room, so... Yeah, that's.
Well, I'll have to mention though, there's different board revisions, and I had to make a slight tweak to get it to fit right in that case, because I did have like a 2 or 3 millimeter difference on the on my first revisions. So if I remember correctly, it's see, board revisions 1.1 and up will fit in the case.
But if not, you would just have to, use a drill or a Dremel and widen the holes a tiny bit, right?
Yeah, you'll have to definitely persuade it with some tools.
But it's
If
not
you
like
have
you
a
have to
different
re-drill
brand.
all the holes. You would just need to kind of tweak what was already there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it won't fit as nicely in the back of the console. But I mean, most of us, you put it in your shelf, you plug it in, and that's it. You don't touch it, right? There's no kids throwing these consoles around, so you should be fine. But I still only officially say that the case will work with Rev 1.1 and up.
Gotcha.
And people that have bought some of the first graphics boosters, the Rev numbers were letters because I changed my formatting for some unknown reason. So letters predate numbers.
Huh. I think I must have one of the very, very original ones then. Because I remember right when I think it was your first batch or something, I bought one from you. Huh.
Yeah, the first ones that I sold would have been probably Rev C.
I gotta check.
Yeah, I have Rev A, B, C, D, and then 1.0, 1.1, 1.2, and I have to do 1.3 because I screwed up some oscillator design, but hey.
So now you have recently gained access to a 3D printer, right?
I've owned a 3D printer for quite a long time, actually. I bought a PrinterBot Simple Metal almost 2 years ago, but it took me a really, really long time to actually just set it up and calibrate it and whatnot. But then I found out that my boss didn't mind if I just set it up on my desk at work and toyed with it on my breaks.
That's
so now
awesome.
I print. Yeah, now I print while I'm at work. I use the, I show up a few minutes early. I start a print. Then during the break, I clean up the surface, whatnot. I start another print.
That is awesome.
And people are the only condition I have is that if a teacher, because I work in a school, so if a teacher wants something printed, I have to print it for them. So.
Yeah, seems like a good deal.
It's a really good deal.
So you brought up, or you just uploaded a whole 3D design file for the Super Nintendo multi-out, and I guess it's for the front-loading NES is the main use for it when people were adding the NES RGB kits and cutting the hole in the back and stuff. How did you get that model? Did you make that yourself, or did you?
Yeah, basically I just I took a caliper to an NES an SNES cable. I measured it, then made an enclosure around it, made a small board to fit in, then put some nice pads and some nice labels, and that's pretty much it. And this will be funny to some viewers, but my main intent for this was actually to put this multi-out on a Genesis just to have hell freeze over. And I'm gonna do it. I want to do it sometime this weekend. I want to mod one of my Genesis to use a SNES cable.
I hate to break it to you, but you're not the first person that's done that. I know somebody sent me pictures of theirs because they had bought the HD Retrovision SNES cable, but not the Genesis, and then they decided they wanted it for both, so they bought one of those online, and then kind of. When I say hot glued it, I don't mean they did a bad job. They knew they'd eventually take it out, so they just did a temporary glue job to hold it into place, and it works fine.
Mm-hmm. But something we need to mention about this, Bob, is that I uploaded these designs, and they're open to the public. The 3D, I forget what the license is called. It's attribute share alike, something like that. So it's kind of like GPL, but for
Right.
designs, right? Basically, I want people to take this and tweak it and do whatever the hell they want with it, right? I don't want to make money with this. I just want to, without targeting anyone, I just want to avoid price gouging on these things because I'm not a CAD expert in any ways. I had never used a CAD software before I designed this thing, and learning the software and designing the connector took me a whole maybe 40 minutes, right? So
Wow,
it's not the best thing in the world, but it works, right? So if I can do this in 40 minutes, then somebody else can tweak it and improve upon it and keep it open source, obviously, because that's what the license entails. But yeah, hopefully
So
someone
what's
comes
your
up with a
opinion
better design.
on people selling these? So I would imagine if it was something like, hey, me and my cousin Scott want one, so I'm just going to order two and split it with him. I think that's kind of what you that's your intention for all this. But what if it was the opposite? What if, what if Joe Blow, what if that shady character Voltar takes your design and then, builds 30 of them and sells them for $40 online? That is against the rules for this, right?
I'll have to be honest. The attribute share-alike 3 license that I selected was the first one in the drop-down menu when I made it public.
Gotcha. So you're not sure?
So I think what I was looking for in a license was just that whatever mods that you do, just like a GPL v3, for instance, you have to contribute back to the community, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't care if somebody wants to sell this for $40, that's their own prerogative. If somebody wants to buy it for $40, again, whatever. I'm not going to support that, and I'm going to scream out loud if somebody does that, but that's their right. So.
Well, you have your logo tastefully put on the inside, so it's no one's. It's not like it's glaringly tacky on the outside, but it's enough where if somebody tried to sell it on eBay, people would know it was your design. So I have a feeling everybody would kind of police that on their own if they saw that out there.
Yeah, and that's the intent too, right? I mean, I'm as time permits, I'm trying to open source as many of my designs as possible, right? And by putting my logo on there, I hope it makes people realize, hey, well, DB's a pretty open source guy, right? So if they go to my website, they can find the STL and they can have it printed. There's 4 grams of plastic on here. It takes about 20 minutes to print on my printer. And I mean, if somebody has a printer, they should, charge you about like $1 or $2 for one of these, right? So.
Yeah, there's been All right, I gotta switch to beer. I got one of those colds that just won't go away. It's been like over 2 weeks. It's driving me nuts. But so generally speaking, I've seen a lot of these things for sale, and some of them have been very fair. When you take into account, you got to hand polish them when you're done to make sure, well, if you want them to look nice. I've seen some that were painted, that, came with the printed circuit boards as well, which I think you put up the design for the circuit board too, right?
Yeah, the Gerbers are available for the PCB that I made.
So you could just go to like OSH Park and make a handful for yourself if you wanted to or something, right?
Yeah.
But I've seen people sell them for not yours. I mean, over the years, for reasonable prices. But I've also seen people sell them for ridiculous prices, and so I'm really glad to see that you do this because, it's kind of a weird thing when somebody has the only one, and they want to charge $1 million for it. People will buy it reluctantly because it's the only one out there. But the fact that just now that there's any choice at all is awesome, and I'm glad somebody's doing it. So. Yeah,
and it's not to say that others on the market are too expensive. I mean, I bought the back panel for the multi-out that goes on the NES top loader, right?
Right.
And you do pay a few bucks for it, but it looks like it's an SLS print and not an additive print.
Right.
And SLS costs more money. It's a higher quality print, right? So I wouldn't know how much it costs to get it printed, but I assume it costs more. So that could explain the high price of that one.
So now it's been quite a few years since I've done plastic molds and stuff like that. That was back when I had that real job with computer design. But it's SLA and SLS, correct? And SLA
the
is
SLS
the additive one, which is it's literally the 3D print that most people know of now. And SLS, what is the difference between those two?
Well, the additive method is just kind of there's a head and it melts plastic and it deposits it where you want plastic and it builds it in layers. SLS is selective laser sintering, and I'm sorry if I get it wrong, but it's kind of like a bath of powder, and then there's a light that cures the powder into plastic. And it still builds it up in layers, but the advantage of the powder is that it can design hanging parts without supports.
Right.
Whereas if you have a standard like $1,000 printer like the one I have, if you're designing, say, like a figure that has arms, well, the arms can't appear out of nowhere, right? There needs to be a support from the ground up in order to hold those arms up, right? And then when the print is done, you usually sand those off.
Yeah, it's funny, the difference a few years make. When I was at that other company, to get an SLA mold of something printed like that, 3D printed, I mean, it was a minimum $500, I would think, minimum. And it was just nowadays, if you own a 3D printer, it's a few dollars, and in plastic, and even if you need to get it sent out. So people that do this for a living, where you send it to the design to their website, and they send you back the thing, it's still remove a zero from it. It's just so cool how far the technology's come with that.
Mm-hmm. Even for like if people want a one-stop shop to get the PCB and the shroud printed at the same time, there's a place I use sometimes called Dirty PCBs, and they'll actually just charge you by the gram for SLA 3D printing.
Oh wow, really? Where is that located? Canada?
No, I think it's in the US. It's Dirty PCBs. I order from there when I need something quick and dirty. But the nice thing is, like we said, for this, because there's 3D printing and a PCB, you can get it both from the same shop. You could probably save a few bucks on shipping.
That is pretty awesome. Yeah, and it's I've worked with SolidWorks before, but I've never started a 3D model from scratch. It was always, I used to work with this genius engineer. The guy, I have pictures of him on my website doing modifications to some of my carts, but I would take a design that he did, and then I would, all right, well, I need to move this, I need to add this, and then I would send it back to him to check it, and most of the time I'd make mistakes, but that's really where my experience in the 3D modeling ends, is just, I could tweak something that somebody else has done, but, and I take my time and I do all the measurements, but it's a little intimidating jumping into it for the first time,
Yeah, well, I mean, mine is just like a couple of rectangles and a few circles, and that's it, and you extrude them. It's nothing complicated, right? I'm sure anyone who would give it enough time would be able to come up with this. I'm not a genius by any respect for this, right?
Yeah, well, it's sorry I keep pausing. I'm just trying not to cough directly in the mic. But it's good that I've seen a lot of people like you put these designs online. A lot of the things I've seen too were NES. I think it was at least Nintendo and I think Genesis cartridge designs, so people could 3D print their own cartridges for the plastic cases for game cartridges. That was pretty cool too.
You bring up a good point that I actually have the designs for the Genesis cartridge and Master System cartridge. I should put those on my website. I've just forgotten to do it.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, I mean the Genesis one is fairly ubiquitous and you can buy a lot of them, but I actually have the designs for the Master System cart too, which I'm sure people could use.
I want a clear Master System cart. I know it's dumb, but I want to put my EverDrive in a clear cart and then use it that way. So I'm gonna get on that. Or maybe I'll go to Dirty PCB if you send me the design. See how much they would charge for something like that. So what else do you have on the agenda? Because you and I alone have talked about a million different projects, and it's just finding time in the day. We both have day jobs and families and stuff, so it's always whenever you have the extra minute. What do you have on the agenda?
Well, in the past, I mean, some people that have been following me for a while, I used to sell this thing, which I called the PC Henshin, which is a TurboGrafx universal region converter, right? Again, modless to prevent hack jobs to your nice U-card connector.
So for people that aren't totally aware of all these things, in order to play a PC Engine game on a TurboGrafx 16, you either need a region mod or something like that, correct?
Yeah, the thing is, if you want to play a Japanese game on a TurboGrafx 16, their region protection scheme was to flip the data bus around. So the 8 data bits bits were just flipped around. So D7 to D0, D1 to D6, and so on, right? So you can just kind of passively flip those around to play cheaper Japanese Hue cards on the American console. Mm-hmm. But to go the other way, which I mean some people want to do, if you want to play American cards on the Japanese console, those cards actually check which region they're on, right? And for that, like you said, you do need a mod, which involves, I think grounding or putting to VCC a pin of one of the chips inside. Mm-hmm. But me and an engineer from Chicago who goes by the name of Ishi Yakazuo, something like that, we came up with kind of a Game Genie way to cheat the console into thinking that it's one region or the other. So we're able to make a universal region mod on this board that goes either way. So you can put it in either an American console or a Japanese console, and it'll play any game from the other region.
That's pretty awesome. And to be honest, the reason I would, well, I mean, maybe I'm the minority in this, but the reason I could think of is I know a lot of people that ended up buying PC Engine Duos, but they still want to play some of the American games that they have. So that would be the perfect solution for it then.
Yeah.
Just no
the
mod
American
required, just plug it in and go.
Yeah. And like I said, I used to make this, but at that time I had not found a suitable HuCard connector. So I kind of jimmied one together from two Samtech SIBF connectors. And it was really laborious to make. It took like almost 30 minutes per board for me to assemble. So I had to sell it for quite a bit of money. But my concept of quite a bit of money was still a lot cheaper than the other converters that you'd find out there, because people were charging way up the ass for this.
Yeah.
Right. But I decided to stop making it. And then just a few weeks ago, I found someone on Twitter that in China that actually manufactures brand new HuCard connectors.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wait, so because it's just the pin connector, those are the kind of those will work in anything, right? A PC Engine, a TurboGrafx, a Duo, well, pretty much.
They're
anything,
not.
Right? Yeah,
they're not exactly the same mechanically as the ones that you'd find in the consoles, because they have extra mounting posts.
Mm-hmm.
But you could cut those off and still make it fit. But the nice thing is that you can make new products with it for a perfect fit for HuCards. So I'm going to resurrect the PC Henshin really, really soon with these brand new connectors.
I know who's going to be buying a bunch of those connectors too. Voltar, for all of those epoxied consoles that he's been repairing, that he's been painstakingly getting every one of the pins back to life. Just throw them out and put a new one of those connectors in, and you're good to go.
Yeah, I've already shown the connector to him. I've given him the source.
Good.
And once I test it, and I know that it's working perfectly, I'll advertise to everyone where I bought these. I mean, I don't want to have a monopoly on anything, right?
But didn't you just recently open source that too, or was it a different project?
This design, the files are available on my website, and the VHDL and whatnot, that's open source as well.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So what I intend to do is, obviously it's going to be one board with the, and you can plug in your HuCards in the back, but I also want to make a nice little 3D printed hood that kind of hides everything, with a nice big DB on there, just to make sure everyone knows it's DB.
Yeah, but that's I don't know, that's an aesthetic that I would really like. Having an exposed PCB is cool, but I think that makes a lot of people kind of nervous. What if I drop something on there that's metal, and it just any kind of cool cover like that, I think is just a really neat aesthetic to have with something.
Yeah. So I'm not sure that I'm actually going to be able to sell the hood with every unit, because these did sell like hotcakes when I had them. Because looking at the size of the hood, it's probably going to take a few hours to print one. But I'll definitely put the design on the website.
Now, if you have more of an industrial printer, like the ones that don't cost $1,000, they cost $20,000, $30,000. You could probably spit out a lot more. But I wonder how much people would charge for that, because then they have to. It's only fair that they make enough money back to pay for that $20,000 printer. So
yeah,
it's probably going to cost a lot more.
If I see that the demand is high enough, I may actually, send out for a batch of 100 or 200 or whatever at a time, right? And then I'll have nice SLS printed hoods that go on this.
See, that's why I like, and you know what? Screw it. Let me ask your opinion on this. There's so many projects out there now in our community where people have a great idea and they make a great prototype, and then no one sees anything for a year. And it's nobody's fault, really. It's not like somebody's doing something wrong, but when you have things like PayPal, where if you have a delay, people can file complaints and get their money back. But it's not just when they do that. You're not just refunding their money. Now there's complaints against your account, and if something goes past, I believe, 6 months, you don't refund their money. You have to pay them. So if somebody paid you $100 and then you have what 2.5%, you got to send them back 250 in order for that to go through. So I think a lot of people are scared away from pre-orders for things like that. It was actually Nick from HD from HD Retrovision that recommended one place, and they take a higher cut. But I'm really wondering if a safer pre-order thing would kind of solve a lot of these issues. I mean, I would always encourage people to do what you've done and show a working sample. You've sold a bunch of these things, especially with your products. You've already sold a bunch of them. But if people really wanted, oh, well, I want a nice 3D printed cover, how do you feel about just taking a pre-order and as soon as it hits 100, then you put the order in and everybody gets theirs?
I know some people adopt that model, and I mean, all the power to them for doing that. I'm scared shitless to do that model. I want to have a tested and working board in my shop before I actually take anyone's money. And
well, no, but that's just what I mean. You do have tested working boards. Like,
yeah.
If somebody said they wanted the DB graphics booster with, I don't know, with an SDI connector on it, whatever. And you're like, fine, if you get 100 of them to do it. The company that Nick found, you don't collect the money. So you have no fiscal responsibility until you pull the trigger. So if a year goes by and you say, you know what, the project, it's not going to work, everybody gets their money back. You don't lose anything. They don't lose anything. I think the company who hosts these probably lose a little, but whatever. But if you do get the project done, whether it's a day, a week, a year, when that's ready, then you collect the money. And I think they take a bigger cut off the top, but it's not ridiculous. I think it's like, now it's 3.5% instead of 2.5% or something. That was kind of the thing that Nick found. I thought was kind of worth looking into, I guess would be the best way to put it.
Yeah, that could be useful for somebody who's trying to start out. I mean, I do recall when I first started making products, I had to obviously inject some of my own money into it, and that was scary, right? I mean, you want to order like a batch of 100 PCBs and 100 connectors and 100 of this and 100 of that, and you're like, shit, that's a lot of money. Am I going to sell all of this? And I mean, time has obviously told that I did sell all of them, but when I was faced in that situation, I did not know. I might have ended up with a stock of 99 because nobody wants to buy my crappy PCBs, right? So that could be I'd have to look into that. I mean, it could be a nice venue for future projects. Not only, like you said, that it adds the security on both sides financially, but it also helps you gauge what kind of demand there would be for your product.
Yeah, and I mean, I think especially because we have such a relatively speaking, a small community. I mean, there's thousands of people that go in and out of the forums and on our websites every day, but when you compare it to something like like the Honda Civic car modding community, there's millions. So we have such a small community that I think people would understand if you said something like, you and anybody with a proven track record, like, hey, my goal's for 100. If if I make 100, it's going to cost $10, whatever it is that you're selling, and then you only get 50 pre-orders. I don't think it would be a big deal if you were like, hey, look, we only got 50 pre-orders. It's going to cost 13, not 10. Who's still in? Do you guys still want it? Like, in a situation like that, I don't think there'd be an uproar. And if there was, then it's going to be from people that you're probably not going to want as customers anyway.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a good point you raised, the thing about increasing the price. I've increased the price on some of my products, not to get a bigger cut, just because the Canadian dollar has gone down. I've had to change some components. The board just becomes more expensive, and I've never had any complaints that any of my things were too expensive. So
no, well, I mean, they're not. I mean, I guess it's just my opinion, of course, but they're not. I mean, they all fit the price points, in my opinion.
I'm not aiming for any kind of price point actually when I make these. I have a spreadsheet with the BOM and the cost from DigiKey, and then the cost from the PCB assemblers, and then there's just a little magic formula at the bottom, and that's what the price is. I don't make something and say I'm going to sell this for $80, right? I do round the number off so that I don't sell it for 63.23 whatever. Mm-hmm. But it's always it's a formula price. It's not a price point that I'm aiming for.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's always a tricky thing because like when I was doing the PCBs, the stuff that I was selling, I mean, that whole thing, the SNES amp started because I was tired of soldering those chips together, and I was just bored of it. I don't enjoy doing that same crap over and over and over. And then I started, for the first time to make my own design from scratch, which, was like, 4 components on a little THS amp. And then I found Bordy, who did it better. And I just emailed him, and I was just, I was like, well, what's the worst that could happen? The guy tells me I'm an asshole, but I just emailed him and said, hey, I'm trying to make the same thing. Yours is better. Like, what do you think? Could we work together? And he was the one that said, no, do it. Do whatever you want with it. Just, sell it for a reasonable price. And when I ordered those, I was just terrified that there would be like a way better way, or like I would have made it wrong or something. But the truth is, the only 2 downsides to it were, to do it right, you needed to add the the extra brightness resistors, and then there's different chips that may or may not work better, but there's nothing wrong with it. So I was very lucky, but I was really scared with that because, I had to fork out all my own money, not to mention all the time on top of it. And if I had gotten 100, because you could order 10, but it ends up being like $30 each for something that shouldn't cost $30. So, it's scary when you order that first 100 and you're like, man, did I just lose all my money on this? But no.
Well, you should see the mountain of unusable PCBs that I have in here.
Yeah.
Well, like I was saying earlier, right? Enumerating all the graphics booster revs that I have, right? There's A, B, C, D, then 1.0, 1.1, 1.2, and now I'm going to 1.3. I have a pile like this big of graphics booster boards that are obsolete.
Yeah, it sucks, but it's, you got to go through it to get to where you're at.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, like even something really, really simple like my original power base converter, I think there's 6 board spins on that one.
Well, I would think that anything, anything from, writing and recording a song to creating a PCB to writing a story, anything, you're never going to, it's always going to be multiple revisions before you really feel like you got it right,
Oh, absolutely. I average maybe 3 or 4 revisions before I can actually sell something, which is not bad. It's just, the thing is it takes a long time. Hardware iterative cycles are really long. Right?
I think that's one of the things that a lot of people that have never tried to do anything like this before, and even people that are closely tied into the scene and follow what everybody's doing, unless you've tried to make one of these yourself, it's really hard to grasp not only the delays but how one affects everything else. So you make your PCB and then you send it off to OSH Park, and they're usually, actually, I've found them to be very quick, but you have to wait for them to get it back. You fix your mistakes. You send it back, you fix your mistakes. All right, this is perfect. Then you go to a place like ITED out in China, and then 7 weeks later, you get your, your boards, and it's just, and next thing you know, you've blinked an eye, and 3 or 4 months have gone by before your products arrived, even though they were done 3 or 4 months ago. So it's, it's so time consuming just to go through. You'd have to be able to make your own boards, which don't they have something like that now where you can put the board in and it prints electrical traces on the board? It's only 2-layer boards, of course, but I think they have that now, right?
I think I've seen that, yeah.
That's pretty neat.
I seen a dual extruder printer. One head is plastic, one head is conductive, whatever, aluminum, copper, and it also has a pick and place machine integrated. so it'll print the plastic, it'll print the circuit with the conductive material accordingly, then it'll drop with the pick and place the components that you need, and then it'll solder them into place and whatnot. So it's a fully encapsulated circuit that never existed as individual parts. Right?
How much does that cost?
I'm not sure. I think what I saw was a university project.
Oh, okay. Because God, I can't. I'm almost afraid to say it because I'm afraid I'm going to get it wrong, but I think badassconsoles, Michael is buying a pick-and-place machine. So, to make sure some of his designs get done a little bit better. So that's it's a big investment, but hopefully he'll be able to make some money off of that from us, from the people that need a few board designs done and just quick printouts of them and stuff.
Yeah.
But that's a big investment. So I I just remembered what I was trying to ask you when I had that awkward pause and the coughing fit before. um, so to go back to what we started to talk about, but I said hold on till later. What about that knockoff graphics booster from Hong Kong, I believe?
So I've seen pictures of it, right? And Steve from HD Retrovision, he actually bought one and he analyzed it. But I'm not gonna go.
I bought one too,
take...
and I sent it to Voltar to analyze on his scope, and you're next on the list. I bought that for you. I just wanted to send it because Voltar saw that and got pissed. He's like, "Oh, this is junk. What the hell is this shit?" So I bought it and sent it to him, and then he's gonna send it to you, and that's a trophy for you to have, just to laugh at. But that is not. I am not an electrical engineer. I am a bad amateur at this stuff, and even my untrained amateur eye took one look at that and went, "What the hell is he using to amplify? Oh no, oh that's bad." So would you want to talk about that a little bit, just for people that are wondering why they should spend, more than double the price on yours than just buy that piece of junk from Hong Kong?
Well, that piece of junk from Hong Kong. I mean, you're talking about. You said your exact sentence was something like, "What is he using to amplify?" Oh no. Well, most of those signals aren't amplified.
Right.
There's some that, I mean, the audio just goes right through. He uses, the caps are on backwards, first of all. You look at the pictures, and there's
Wait,
emitter.
are they?
Yeah, they're backwards. There's coupling caps on the inputs of the emitter followers.
That's awesome.
And they're on backwards.
Yeah,
but then the emitter follower on the other side.
Very nice guy emailed me about that, and then he said he figured, well, it's $20. Let me see what it's like. Fair enough, totally fair. He got it. He goes, yeah, I plugged it in and it works fine, so I'm just gonna keep it. What kind of TV are you using? And I don't actually remember what he was using. And it's funny too, because if you're using like a beat up old CRT and you're using some like one of the CSY clones where you actually have to take the potentiometers and dial in the signal from RGB to component.
Yeah. I have a few of those.
Yeah, you'd never be able to tell the difference. And one of these days, your converter is going to blow up because it's getting a bad signal. But so I get that part of it. But anybody with real equipment, man, you'll notice immediately. And it's not. I mean, it's. I always use the analogy, especially when talking to EEs. No offense. I have a lot of people that I've worked with over the years. You can't make a design that way. Why? Because it's not supposed to be that way. Why? And there's always three things. It's not supposed to be that way because that's not the way the spec was written, and your equipment might have a shorter life. All right, I'll take that one. Well, it's not really going to damage anything, but what would have lasted 50 years might only last 5 or 10. It's probably not a great idea. All right, I don't want to do it that way. And then there's something's going to blow out quickly. It's going to be, soon. You're damaging your equipment. It's like a slow burn. This is terrible. So it's, when I see stuff like that, I wonder if it's 2 or 3 on that scale, because it's it works, but how badly are you damaging your equipment while using it?
Well, that board is definitely the worst end of that scale.
Yeah. Yeah, I get in the biggest argument and with a guy I really respect a lot when I was in that other company about we can't release it like this. We can't. It's not to spec. Well, how long? How long is it going to take to blow this out? I mean, 10 years, this thing might not even work anymore. Dude, we have a 2-year contract, and it's a computer. How many people... I mean, these things get rotated out 5 years max. So if you're going from something that could have lasted 15 years, and now it only lasts 10, and that's a very conservative number. It's probably going to last way longer than both of those, or something else on the motherboard is going to die way before. Why are we arguing? We're saving, and it was just... And everybody voted in my favor because it's equipment that gets... It's not something that's designed to be used forever. It's designed to be rotated out every couple of years. So I'm totally okay with stuff like that. Things don't have to be perfect all the time. But if something I buy is going to damage something else I own, I don't want to use it. It's different,
exactly. And it's... I mean, I think I have a different mentality if we're talking about, like you're saying, like a PC manufacturer, where I know in 5 years I'm not going to be using this box anymore. But if I'm going to be putting something in my console that was built in the 80s and it's going to reduce its life, well, I'm going to throw it out in the garbage right away, right?
So that's actually, I didn't even mean to do this, but segue. So Sega, when they designed their consoles, they clearly had that PC mentality in mind. Oh, who's going to be using a Genesis in 5 years,
Yeah.
let alone 10? Which is why all their capacitors are rotted out, and especially on the Game Gears, ugh, those are the worst.
Yeah.
Which is why whenever I talk to people, if there's a chance to do something like an RGB bypass, sure, the internal components were fine when it was new, and sure, you can do a cap replacement, but you're still talking about something where, when you and I design something, and if it's all right, well, let me spec out these caps. Well, these are 20 cents more, but they're going to last 10 times longer. Yeah, fine, 20 cents, I'll spend that. That's nothing. To Sega, that's 20 cents times 20 million for every capacitor in there. So they're not going to do it. They're going to take the cheaper ones, where your average hobbyist is going to take the more expensive ones to try to build something that lasts. So any of these bypass things that we've been installing, especially any of the ones that I've sold, because I made sure to only spec out, the best within reason. I'm not going to go a .01 tolerance capacitor for $8 a piece. But, within reason, I've spec'd out the best that I could for it.
Why
It's
not, Bob? Why
probably
not?
going to last longer than any of the internal stuff in there. And maybe we're maybe we're talking past our lifetimes, but I don't know. I mean, the Genesis is already starting to fall apart a lot. You need to do a lot of these replacements. So that's why whenever I have the choice, I always lean towards the bypass rather than using the internal components.
Yeah, I mean, and especially with the Genesis video, it was never good anyways. So
That's subjective because a lot of people, because the Genesis video, well, I mean, if you're talking about the dirty signal, you're 100% correct. But Voltar's got that board that it does an RGB bypass, but uses its own circuitry, I guess is the best way to put it. So the traces on the board that were ran badly in almost all of the Genesis revisions, his board takes it, and this isn't industry secrets. He talked about it with me on the last podcast, and he removes it from the board, so you have to lift a lot of pins. Which it's funny. I think both you and Tim Worthington called it horrific the first time I did that, where I lifted all the pins on the VDP of the Genesis. But you have to take all the signals off the board because the board is the problem. And then he runs it to his board, which replaces the components that you were going through, and then back into that CXA and out. So from that perspective on it, you're still going through the CXA chip, but you're going through a lot of other, you're not going through the same boards and caps, or I mean the same resistors and caps that were on the board. You're going through his. So from that perspective, the Genesis output looks great. That CXA chip does have that distinctive look when for Genesis games. I've seen people put other chips in it, but as long as I think the issue was the dirty signal, I guess, is the best way. Because I guess Mark from My Life in Gaming, who at this point he's certainly proved himself as somebody that can tell when a signal doesn't look good. I mean, the guy's done more screen caps. I think at this point he's probably done more than me. He has some weird revision Genesis with no jail bars and no interference. I've never seen one personally before, but and it looks great. It's only the noise in that is the issue. All the ones I've seen look terrible. So getting around that is and getting around it with newer components is always the goal. Did you want to talk about your bypass board a little bit?
Yeah, we can mention it a bit. I just want to say though, I'm bitching here about the video quality of the Genesis, but the one in my main setup is unmodded and it has jail bars, and I think I would be sad if I played on the Genesis and if it didn't have any jail bars. It's almost like it's part of the experience at this point.
I couldn't disagree more. No offense. Because I've been lucky enough to be able to have all of these older consoles, especially the ones I grew up with, and then to see the progression of the work that we've all done over the past probably 5 years, I guess. And now when I sit down and I play a Super Nintendo and it's flawless, absolutely flawless, and I sit down and I see the Genesis, which is, I mean, there's a lot of gorgeous artwork on a lot of those games, and all I see is just these lines coming down the screen. Look at, it's just, oh, it drives me insane. I hate it. I can't wait to get rid of it.
I mean, I can do without the rainbow banding, but the jail bars, I'll have to say, I do feel a bit of nostalgia towards those.
Yeah, to each his own. But there's also a group on Shmups that don't want to use RGB monitors because it looks too good. They prefer composite video, and it's because that's how it looked to them as a kid. I mean, to
Yeah,
each
I'm
his
not that
own.
much of a purist.
No, no, not me. That's almost
But
like the Earth is flat because I was told it was flat when I was a child. But
oh damn. Okay, so yeah, you're talking about this mod. I mean, we'll talk about it a bit. It's not. I haven't fully validated it yet. I've only wired up the video portion of it. But what it is it is an RGB bypass, like you mentioned. It bypasses the bad tracing on the Genesis. I wired it here into my Model 1 with a nice 240p card because that's how you got to test stuff.
yeah,
Basically, the intent was to make a board that's the exact same size as the RF module. Yeah, am I on the
yeah,
camera?
I can see it fine.
Okay, yeah. And I want the board to just fit right in there, and the DIN 9, which is the same as the Genesis 2, would line up theoretically with the RF output. And first revisions, right? You never get it right, so I didn't get it right on this one. I have to change the mounting to the underside. But thus far, the video looks really good. I'll. It includes the 7374, right? So it amplifies the RGB, and the sync goes through the amplifier as well. And I also included the I forget what the name is for the audio amp for the Genesis.
Mega amp.
Yeah, the mega amp. Yeah, that's exactly it. So it includes the mega amp as well. So you'd have to rewire all of your audio paths for the Sega CD, the PSG, the YM 2612, and all those. And once I test it, I'll say that it works. But I haven't tried the audio path yet because I just wired this up yesterday.
So I got a couple of questions about that. So first of all, anybody that's looked at the Mega Amp documentation, it is a little bit intimidating. It's not, you don't just lift a resistor and solder a wire. It's small spots. It's different on each motherboard revision. Do you have a way to bypass that if you just wanted to, like if you're lucky enough to have one of the original Model 1 boards that sounds good? Or do you just...
Well, that's a good point, Bob. I should include a way to bypass it. I mean, theoretically, you could add a wire that plugs directly to the DIN 9 from the other audio outputs and bypass everything. Yeah.
I mean, to be honest, that right there sounds like a perfectly fine solution. Just I would just add that to the documentation because it's a very small percentage of the Model 1s that I would call, I don't want to say perfect, but they're pretty damn good. And it's most of the rest that aren't. So I would assume that even people with Model 1s would want to do the Mega Amp. Even for the reasons I was just talking about. It's brand new components versus components that have been on a board for 30 years. So,
yeah. But the thing is, though, with the Model 1, you lose mono audio once you remove the CXA chip, right?
I don't think anybody cares about that.
No. I still think I need to say that. I mean, some people will complain, oh, where's the mono audio?
Somebody's going to complain about anything. The other thing, too, that I wanted to make sure to ask about is to this day, even though I tried to document it as well as I had time to on my site, the sync coming out of certain Genesis and Master Systems, because that board could be used for the Master System as well, right?
Yeah.
So... I guess the best way to say it is it's always weird. So sometimes it's, I believe it's TTL sync right off the board, but people's cables aren't built correctly, so their displays aren't compatible with it. Other times the cables are built correctly, but the sync just doesn't work. Syncing on composite does. And people have had kind of a Band-Aid solution, love it or hate it, where they've stuck THX 7314 amp to amplify the sync signal, which solves the problem. It creates more problems than it solves, but I mean, it does work. So when you actually have the sync going through one of the 4 channels of that amplifier, correct?
Yeah.
I think that's going to solve more problems than people realize just doing that alone. Just having properly... I'm sorry, man. Sorry to everybody listening. I keep coughing and I'm trying not to. So I think that, and then when you have it coming off, do you have the components to make it TTL sync or 75 ohm C sync coming off of it?
Right now it's 75 ohm sync.
Okay.
That's coming off. I mean, I like to think that everything should be video level, but clearly not all cables are built that way. Actually, incidentally, I just received a sample from retrogamingcables.co.uk, and their new Genesis cable, the one that we said didn't have the
It
what was
includes
it?
the
Didn't have,
boards with the surface mount stuff, right?
yeah. I mean, before that, it didn't have the capacitors, right? Now,
Right, but I think he also now he has the resistors on that board, correct?
yeah, now the resistors are on here. I mean, they should be in
It
the
should be on the
DIN
console
end,
end. Yeah.
but I mean, at least they're on there. But his sync circuit is designed for a 75 ohm sync video level and not a TTL sync.
So what would happen if you would plug that into this board? Would it still work?
Yeah, it'll work. I mean,
I would think worst comes to worst, you would just have to remove their resistor, right?
yeah, you'd have to change. I mean, if you have TTL sync, ideally this resistor should be large enough to voltage divide it down to video levels, right? Usually it's what, like 480 ohms, something like that they use. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But it's definitely something I'm gonna have to consider. Obviously, this is just the first board spin, right? So I'm gonna toy around with that. Just like the newest revision graphics booster, there's a jumper on there, so people can select whether they want video level sync or TTL sync.
I saw that. That's awesome. It's I wish there was I wish there was one connector we all could just invent or adopt or something that would have, the connector itself would be built for no interference and have enough pins for everything, and it's not a pre-existing cable. And that way, we could say if you use this connector, make sure that you're outputting, RGB to spec and 75 ohm C-Sync to spec and go through. The only time that it's just impossible is with the Genesis. Because, you have to use... Well, if you don't care about the 32X, it doesn't matter. But I think even though there's only a handful of games, I think everybody would at least want the ability to use one if they should desire in the future. So if you were to switch the connector and say, oh, let me put a custom one on, then you'd also have to provide that 32X jumper, and then somebody would still have to have... You'd either have to replace the output of the 32X with another one. I mean, it's just... You're better off just being stuck with the Genesis 2 connector on that. But... maybe we could all come up with a great solution for everything that's not Genesis, just so that nobody, we don't have to worry about this anymore. We could all say, here's a reminder of what RGBS is supposed to be, and here's what all your devices are supposed to handle. Because I think the only devices that, I don't think any devices are designed for TTL sync. I just think there's a bunch that can accept both. So I think if you're making something from scratch right now, if you do 75 ohm sync, that would cover all grounds, right?
They're supposed to be, yeah. Like the PVM inputs and whatnot, they're designed for that. And like you said, they accept TTL sync because they have proper input circuitry that accepts that and or protects against that. But it's definitely not supposed to be that way.
Right. And there's even some Extron devices that were designed that we as retro gamers don't ever use them for what they were originally designed for, but they were designed to have TTL sync and for a bunch of different reasons. But because those guys were smart enough to realize this is a multi-purpose device, you could feed it in 75 ohm and it works perfect. So that's the only device I know, actually.
I've had some people complain. Well, not complain. I've had some people tell me that when they're using certain types of cheap Chinese upscalers with the graphics booster, that the sync level makes a difference because their upscaler only accepts a TTL sync.
Really? Well,
yeah, and I'd have to go back through my email to find out the exact model numbers of those upscalers, but that's definitely something I've heard from my clients.
Well, I'm just going to add that as another reason to not use those garbage upscalers. So, I love the guys from My Life in Gaming. They're both fun guys. I'm glad I'm friends with them, but that's the one thing so far, the only thing that I vehemently disagree is I don't want to touch those cheap Chinese upscalers. One exception only. If you like gaming on a CRT but you want to stream, but it's not about quality. It's just about sharing your experience with people, your Twitch streaming, whatever else. Those things are actually perfect because really, who cares how it looks? As long as people could follow along, it's a really easy way to get a 240p signal to 720. Fine, that's a great device for that. One and only reason, nothing else I could possibly think of. They're all just, I hate them. They're garbage. They never work right. They look so bad. There's just a million reasons I could think of not to use them. So
I got a cheap one off of eBay just to try out with the booster, and I actually thought the video on my LCD looked worse than when I plugged composite into my LCD.
I believe it. I believe it. Well,
it was horrendous. I was mad that I had spent like 50 or 60 bucks on that thing.
Oh, really? On Amazon it was like 30.
Oh, I'm talking Canadian dollars here, right? So.
Oh yeah, sorry. Keep forgetting
see,
in the Great White North.
That's right, yeah.
Well, I could probably sit here for another hour and talk, so I think we better cut it short before everybody else at home falls asleep. Was there anything I forgot to mention? I think I mentioned all your projects. I did forget to mention that you can buy the 240p test suite, Artemio's test suite, that's actually burned on a Genesis cart from you direct. That's such a handy device. That's how I met Artemio, and I never pronounce anything right, by the way. I hope I'm getting Artemio's name right, but I met him because I needed one on a cart for Retron 5 testing, and he mailed me one, and I've been keeping in touch with him ever since. But that's an amazing tool that most people should really like. Unless you're just if you want to do anything other than just buy the console and play anything, any kind of testing at all, you need one of those. And if you have a ROM card, it works, but I use my actual dedicated cart all the time. I think it's a great thing to have. So
maybe I should just take like a couple of minutes to actually explain how I build those, because that's another project that I'm working on.
Yeah, go for it.
There's so I designed this board that includes a like a TeamZ microcontroller, and then there's a cartridge port here, but it's actually on headers, so I can swap this out. Like right now it has a Genesis connector, but I have a Master System one and a SNES one and so on that I'm eventually going to use. But what I do is I design my own flash cartridges. They're one-time use, and that's what I burn 240p on, right? So I just plug them on here, and I burn whatever ROM I need to on here. And I hope to very soon, release this for sale, so homebrewers or whatever, right? They can buy a bunch of blank cartridges, and they can buy this thing. And when they're ready to release 5,
so we could
10...
see a whole bunch of jacked up repros for $200 on eBay. Thanks, René. Appreciate that.
No, well, you know what I'm going to do, and I've done this with because I have a Master System cart that I'm building as well, right? For the same purposes, is one of the tongues on the edge connector I'm replacing with DB, because I like to put DB everywhere, as you know, right?
Yeah, why not? It's your logo.
So people will be able to tell just by looking at the cartridge outside of the case that it's one of my boards, right? So you can't fool anyone that it's an original.
Gotcha. That's actually a great idea for both reasons. One, that it's fun to put your logo everywhere, and two, that it's a good way to prevent privacy or piracy, not privacy. So
yeah, I mean, if they opened it up, sure. I mean, you could tell that it's a fake. But
I don't. There's a whole group of people, and I'm not educated enough in this to understand why. But if somebody says, "Hey, here's a repro of an original cart," and here's how much I want for it, I don't have any problem with that at all. The only problem I've ever had is with, obviously anytime somebody takes somebody else's work without telling them, because there's a bunch of people that burned some homebrews that never got permission. But it's only if people are passing off knock off as original do I get pissed, because there's a bunch of people that were doing the Mega Man Wily Wars repros, and I mean, they did a great job, and they were charging like $50, $40 or something with the full printed colored manual and the case and everything. I think that's cool. I think that's great. I've also seen them for like $150, which is not cool at all, but there's I think repros are great, and they're fun to collect for people that enjoy collecting. I don't have any room. I don't have room for anything, so I'm hiding behind a green screen. So I don't generally collect a lot of that. But yeah, So
Yeah, my intent for that is not repros, right? I want to help people release their games, and as you said, I'm selling 240p, and that's 100% with the permission of Artemio too. I'm never gonna sell like a Mega Man or a Sonic homebrew or whatever without anyone giving me express permission that I can do it.
right. So yeah, well, how much are you selling those for now? How much are they available for?
Those are not. The
The
240p.
240p's, yeah.
I think it's. Fuck, it's on my website. It's $20, and you get the ROM and a brand new cartridge shell with it too.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. I was just trying to look up, but yeah. So, all right. Well, I think we covered everything for today. I'm definitely gonna bug you to have you back on soon enough at some point. So, but thank you for taking the time to do this. I've wanted you on for a while. I just wanted to make sure I was, picked a time where we could promote something you got going on, because you're always in the midst of some project. So, yeah, I appreciate it. Glad to have you on.
I always have 10 things going on at the same time.
I'm glad you have a name I could pronounce really easy, because I had Mikel. I'm gonna embarrass myself. LaRouche?
Mikael.
Yeah. See, I'm an asshole.
Yeah.
I should stop trying to pronounce anything. I should just call everybody "Hey, dude," because I could pronounce that. But
Well,
yeah, I had
that's
him
hard.
on.
That's a hard French name to say, and I mean, I'm French, so I can say it. But
Yeah, well, luckily he did not take offense when I called him Michael the whole time. He kind of laughed at me and thought it was funny, and he was a very good sport about that. So yeah, I feel like such an ass. I never pronounce anything correctly. And it's just, yeah, oops. So thank you, René, for having a name I could say.
well, thank my parents. Yeah.
But all right, man. Well, I appreciate you having you on, and we'll definitely see you soon, probably before the end of the year.
Yeah. Thanks, Bob.
All right, take care.
Bye bye.